Okay, I have a minute after 11. I want to go ahead and start our session today. Thank you all for joining this morning to the vendor supplier registration review. As you can see from the screen, we will be recording the session and we will be providing a link for reference following the meeting. We are still confirming where we're going to exactly provide that link, but we will share that with everyone sometime after the session. Just a few administrative items today. We do have the chat session available. We will try to monitor that, but we'll also have another option for you to submit questions that we'll be sharing a little bit later. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll try to get to those today. We do have a full agenda, but we are happy to track those questions and again, take them after and get feedback to the attendees today. We have several presenters for today. We're going to try to have an interactive session. I'd like to welcome Dwayne Elmore. He's Director of Procurement Services. We'll be speaking today and helping to answer some questions. Mike Hahn, Supplier Admin Team, will also be one of our presenters, as well as Michelle Walker from the Purchasing Procurement Team. And I also like to welcome Megan Berry. She's done a lot of work on the purchasing website as our marketing and communications specialist. So she'll also be helping to show some navigation and some new updates that we've been able to do to the website. We will be showing the PowerPoint today, and we will also be going out to the site to actually give kind of a tour of the purchasing website and some new updates and some new ways we've hoped to help to organize it to make information easier to find. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the agenda for today. Again, what we were really trying to do is provide some background and information as a reminder for kind of with the SYMBA launch for the initial new vendor supplier registration process, to take you up to speed for some new updates today, some things that have changed with the timing. We also wanted to make sure to cover for existing vendor suppliers, helpful reminders about billing and payments, things that might have changed, shipping notifications. So we have some information for existing vendors. We also wanted to cover some tips and tools, some reminders and some new ways to update information. And then also a reminder for support resources and what's available for you to help navigate with answering supplier vendor questions or with the registration process in general. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan Berry to talk about the vendor supplier registration.
So the first thing we want to share is just a little bit of background information. With the SYMBA launch, all suppliers received a letter about the conversion and information on how to log in the new supplier portal. With that, in July, when SYMBA launched, suppliers were given 2 emails. The first email contained a link and a temporary user ID. And the second email contained a temporary password. Once the supplier received these emails, they had 31 days to log in the system. And when they logged in, they needed to create a permanent account with login credentials. Now, due to the longer than normal delays right now, there's a large number of vendors going through the system, so there has been a little bit of delay in the process to date. So the next topic is new applicant registration. So all of the steps that you see on the screen right now can be found on purchasing.psu.edu. You will find the supplier registration form. So suppliers are able to complete that through the link there. On this page, you can also find some helpful documents to download for suppliers and one-time suppliers. And Once suppliers are approved, they get those 2 emails, which is typically within 10 business days. The email will come from vendor-reg@psu.edu. And then just a reminder again that once the supplier receives this information and they log in, they have to change their temporary ID and password. So with that said, we're going to take a peek at the supplier registration form. And
Meg, sorry, before we get to that, there were a couple questions coming into the chat. I was going to try to see if we could quickly address those from any of our panelists and speakers today. So the 2 questions regarding the letters we had were these letters sent to subcontracts that are now considered a vendor? Anybody, subject matter experts, answer that question, or we can take it back? So again, were these letters sent to subcontracts that are now considered a vendor?
So I can take the lead on this one. This is Mike. So the letters were initially sent as an insert with a check payment, letting them know the changes that were coming with SIMBA. So anyone that was paid by the university through accounting operations would have received an initial letter letting them know that the changes were coming with SIMBA and what was coming into play with the supplier portal. Additionally, we sent out 2 email blasts to those suppliers that had an email address that was referenced in the supplier record or as part of the IBIS payment file. So if that information was there, they would have gotten it. If it wasn't there, no, they would not have gotten that information.
The second question was, were these letters sent out to Penn State sub-awardees?
Same answer.
Sub-awardees, I said that wrong. Okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure. Can you provide more details on who is a one-time supplier? Maybe an example?
A guest speaker or honorarium, somebody that we're bringing in once and not going to pay them a second time.
Gotcha. Thank you. And what happens if they don't log in within 31 days to create a permanent account?
So if they don't log in with 31 days to create a permanent account, the information that was sent to them initially will be void. We'd have to resend the emails to them with a new temporary user ID and password.
Great. Thank you for that. In the essence of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on. We appreciate the questions. Again, we are going to track all of the questions and we will respond, but just want to make sure that we can kind of get through the presentation today. So again, as Megan mentioned, we're going to go ahead and rather than show more screens, we want to actually show you the supplier registration page where you go to get this information. So bear with me just a moment as I go out to the site.
So as Melissa's getting to the site, I'll just remind everyone, she's going to go to purchasing.psu.edu.
Okay, and Megan, if you can just direct me from here to the registration form, and we'll show everybody how to get there. Again, it's purchasing.psu.edu for the landing page, and then Megan will direct us on how to find the registration form.
So from there, you're going to click on Info for Suppliers, which is on the right-hand side of the screen. Melissa's already there, and become a supplier page. Under Become a Supplier page, you can click on New Applicant, which is at the top of the page. And there under number 1, you can see where the link is for the supplier registration form. And these are the 4 steps that we talked about in a previous slide. So Melissa's in the registration form right now. We're going to walk down through it and talk about some of the things we wanted to point out. We will let you know that we are working with a vendor to make some improvements to this form. So those are yet to come. So everything with a red asterisk are required fields. The first part we're going to look at is determination of independent contractor employee status. if you respond yes to questions 1 or 3 in this section, you don't want to proceed with the form. You'll want to contact accounting operations for further instructions. So now we'll scroll down to the business address. So under the business address, if you select same as remittance address, don't be alarmed. You'll automatically scroll to the top of the form, like Melissa just demonstrated there. So you'll need to scroll back down the form to the business address section to continue with the form. The contact person, for these fields, we're looking for supplier names and information, not Penn State employees. And if any of this information changes after the registration form is completed, suppliers need to log into the supplier portal. So Melissa, if you can scroll down to the business organization part of the form, the federal ID numbers, you'll see that the FEIN and SSN are both required fields. You'll want to enter zeros in the second field that you're not using. For the business classifications, there are several boxes to check here, and we just wanted to point out that if you don't fall within one of these, that none of the above is on the bottom, and that's what you'd select. The next field that we're going to look at is the cage code. And the cage code is just for ARL or Applied Research Lab vendors only, and it's a 5-digit government code that they'll need to fill in that field. University insurance requirements are directly under that. These requirements are available on purchasing.psu.edu. They are actually under those 4 steps that we looked at to complete for this registration form. And then the last thing within the form that we're going to point out are the attachments. So these attachments need to be Microsoft Office or Adobe forms, and we encourage everyone to complete these forms before they start filling out the registration form. These forms are things such as a W-9 or a W-8, and those forms are available on purchasing.psu.edu as fillable forms, and they are within the 4 steps on completing the registration. So there's links for those there. So again, we just encourage suppliers to look at these forms and complete them and save them. So when they're completing the registration form, they're ready to upload and submit.
Hey, Megan, I have several questions here. I know, again, I'm trying to be conscious of time, but I was going to see while we're on this form, if maybe we could try to address some of these questions. Just kind of scroll up to see where these start. Are these about letters? I want to get back. Does the supplier complete this form or staff? So does a vendor supplier complete this form?
The supplier would need to complete this form.
Great, thank you. Is there a phone number to provide vendor and supplier help with the online system?
They can email PSU suppliers at psu.edu.
Great, thank you. Will you cover what to do if a vendor refuses to register?
We definitely need to push back on the vendors to have them register because we need the information in the system. If we have a vendor that absolutely can't register, if they don't have internet access, you need to contact PSU suppliers at psu.edu, and they'll make a determination whether they can, what is the next steps that need to be done.
Great, thank you. So I have several here for foreign vendors. Let's see, if they're a foreign vendor that has neither an SSN or FEIN, should they put 0 in both fields?
They can put zeros in both fields, but they'll need to complete a W-8 form with their foreign tax identification number.
Oh, great. And we do have that form posted out on the site now, right, Megan? So if y'all need access to it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The W-9 and W-8 forms are fillable forms on purchasing.psu.edu.
Yeah,
Correct, and there's 2 different W-8 forms, one for an individual and one for a company.
Great, thank you for that. So hopefully that will help to have those available. How many zeros are required for either box for the tax information? Is it just 1, or do we need to put the 9 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8?
Normally, we don't have to put any, if you fill out one or the other, we shouldn't have to put zeros in either one. If you don't have either one, if it's a foreign vendor, you'll have to put 9 zeros in that field.
Okay, 9 zeros. What are international vendors expected to fill in on that FEI and SSN required field?
They can put zeros in there if they're foreign vendors, but they'll have to then attach a W-8 with their foreign tax ID.
Okay. So the cage code, can you, Megan, can you say again what this was for and give the description again?
So the cage code is just for ARL vendors, and it's a 5-digit government code.
Applied Research Lab, right?
That's right.
Great, thank you. So maybe a future enhancement, it'd be easy to save the form and work on it over time. Maybe can we make a note that it's a W-9 or a W-8? We get many questions about that. Maybe we can look at that as an FAQ potentially. Some updated instructions. I have a vendor I've contacted numerous times since July. Isn't there any way I can register them? I have 15 invoices to pay. So any suggestions here for what Pam can do? She's not getting a response back from the vendor. Thoughts? Advice?
What was the question again?
I have a vendor that I've contacted numerous times since July. Isn't there any way I can register them? I have 15 invoices to pay.
If the invoices are overdue and you need to get the vendor in the system, we cannot enter a vendor in the system without a W-9 or the vendor information that is needed. So we'll need to contact the vendor and get that information before we can make the payment.
Yeah, so we need to continue it. I don't know if there's another option. There's maybe the contact, if that contact is not longer there. Is there any other contacts in that area? I'm just trying to think of other options. Okay, I know we have several more questions about the form, so we will definitely again track those and get back to you. Just wanted to again get through the materials, and then we'll again give you another option to submit your question. But again, anything that's tracked in the chat we'll take back and address and follow up with the team attending today. Okay, Megan, thank you for doing that review. Again, please continue to provide your questions. I'm going to go back now to our presentation and move on to the next topic.
There were a couple other things I'd like to mention, Melissa.
Sure. Did you want me to go back to the screen?
You're fine. I think I can just say this information. So
Okay.
we just want to remind suppliers that if you're registering and submitting the form, to please only submit it one time. And there is like a 10-day business day window for approval. And if you're having any questions that you're not able to find answers on purchasing.psu.edu, we have a supplier support form that will show you a little later on in the presentation how to find it on the website as well.
Great, thanks, Megan. Megan, can you confirm I'm in the right view? It's just one screen you're seeing, right?
Yes, I'm seeing the registration form tips.
Okay, great. I get confused between that presenter view, so I just want to make sure it doesn't get confusing to have more than one slide showing at a time. Okay, we are going to move into the next section. Mike Hahn's going to talk through billing, payments, and good confirmation receipt. So, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to first talk about billing and payments.
Okay, hi everybody. In accordance with purchasing terms and conditions and PO Clause 82, all invoices presented for payment must reference a valid purchase order number, invoice date, supplier name, and remittance address. Invoices that are not properly presented for payment will be returned to the issuing party with our standard no PO letter that calls attention to and requests the missing information, and a revised copy will need to be presented by the supplier for payment. Although SAP offers the ability for suppliers to upload invoices directly via the supplier portal, and this is going to be a question a lot of folks are going to get if they're working with suppliers, that particular functionality was not tested prior to the Symbol implementation in July. Our hope is to be able to offer this function to our suppliers in the future, but for now, invoices for all Shop Online purchase orders issued by purchasing services should continue to be emailed to psuinvoices@psu.edu and to invoices@arl.psu.edu for those purchase orders issued by the Applied Research Lab. Payments in SYMBA are released in accordance with payment terms. Net terms define the time between the invoice date and the date the supplier expects payment to be received. So for example, if a supplier submits an invoice against a purchase order and the date is November 1st, the payment terms are net 30. That means that the supplier, based on the payment terms, is giving us 30 days to pay the invoice. So although we may enter the invoice into the system on November 1st, it will not be scheduled for payment until December 31st, which is 30 days after the invoice entry date. In eBuy, invoices were released for payment when the invoice confirmation was done. That does not happen in SYMBA. If an invoice does not reference a specific date, our accounts payable team will use the date the invoice was received when entering the invoice for payment. Also, the ability to pay suppliers via automated clearinghouse or ACH payments is a key enhancement that came with SYMBA. ACH payments are an electronic transfer of funds directly into the supplier's bank account. Default payments in SYMBA are set for check payments, so if a supplier would like to receive ACH payments, they must log into the secure supplier portal to enter their banking information. We don't want our vendor team entering the banking information. We want to push that responsibility onto the supplier so that their banking details are secure and entered correctly. For questions or assistance, the supplier can reach out again to PSU suppliers@psu.edu.
Hi, Mike, I have one question. Can you, just let me go back here. It's kind of going. How does the supplier update their payment method from checks to ACH?
So they have to log into the supplier portal, and then they would update their information. There are instructions in the job aid that's provided to them, or they could reach out to our supplier team who can help them with that. But they would enter their banking information directly into the portal. Once that's done, it updates into the system. The default payment switches from check to ACH at that point, and future payments will be made to them as an ACH transfer.
Great. What about non-PO invoices? Are they controlled by payment terms, invoice date entered?
They are also controlled by payment terms, and they also, for non-PO payments, if the supplier does register and indicate ACH payment, the supplier will be paid via ACH regardless of whether it's a PO or a non-PO payment.
Okay, great. Okay, Dwayne, I know you're on. I wanted to pause for a moment to see if there's any other input that you had for billing and payments to share.
No, Mike has summed it up really well. So I follow his lead, please.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we give you an opportunity to weigh in.
Yep.
The next slide, we have an example for an invoice that Mike's going to just kind of point out. I know we kind of talked through this, but we wanted it to show visual, just highlight a few things here. So Mike, I will turn over to you.
Okay, so when my team receives an invoice copy, the areas on this mock-up that are circled, these are the pieces of information that we're looking for specifically before we even begin to enter the invoice for payment. So we're checking for supplier name, address, the remittance information, the purchase order number, which is key because we have to type in the PO number to pull up the details to enter the invoice. If that's missing, we can't do anything. We're looking at the supplier payment terms, and we're also looking at the purchasing order line items to make sure that what we're seeing on the screen matches to what we're seeing on the invoice.
Great. And then the other note here, when will suppliers receive an email? Is it one or all of this information is not available? Just wanted to reiterate that. How many pieces of information needs to be missing before the suppliers get a return email?
So the only thing that would be an automatic reply back to the supplier is if that purchase order is missing. If we have the PO number, we wouldn't necessarily send it back to the supplier unless there is a match, like if the PO description or line items don't match, we may reach out to the supplier for verification of what it is they're billing us for.
Okay.
And also, sorry, the other key piece would be verification of remittance address so that we can make sure the payment does get out to the supplier correctly.
Great. Okay, the next area we want to talk about is the goods confirmation and three-way match. And again, Mike's going to provide us some information regarding this topic.
Okay, the procure to pay process involves a three-way match that can best be related to a three-legged stool. For the process to be accurate, secure, and in compliance, in essence, supporting your weight and not toppling over, all three legs of the stool must be in place. The first leg of that stool is the purchase order. PO is a commitment issued by the university to the supplier for goods or services at a specific or negotiated rate. The second leg of the stool is the goods confirmation. This is an online verification that the goods or services have been delivered, are in acceptable condition, and are a match against the purchase order description, purchase order price, and purchase order quantity. The individual who creates the cart in most instances automatically defaults in as the goods confirmer for the order. The exception to this is any business area that has a central receiving role. For instance, those locations around the institution who have centralized deliveries to a loading dock, such as the Applied Research Lab or OPP. To add clarification, the goods confirmation piece, in Simba, goods confirmation is required for all Shop Online Lion orders, regardless of dollar amount, and also for Lion Marketplace orders over $5,000. You can find more information on the goods confirmation piece of the process by visiting the training and resources page at simba.psu.edu and selecting the receiving link under the procurement heading. This will get you to simulations and hands-on job aids that will show you how to find POs that need a goods confirmation. It'll do a demo of doing a goods receipt as well as doing a goods confirmation. Then the third and final leg of the stool is the invoice receipt. Invoices are matched against the purchase order, description, price, and quantity, but are also matched to the goods confirmation as a way of ensuring that the university is paying for only those goods or services that have been received. If the three legs of the individual stool, the PO, the goods confirmation, and the invoice receipt match, that's when the payment will release.
Great. Mike, I'm just checking the chat for any questions regarding three-way match here. One question is, who would I contact if we did a goods confirmation on items we did not receive? Order was canceled, not fulfilled, so no invoice.
So if there's no invoice, you would actually just need to submit a purchase order change form to purchasing@psu.edu and just to request that purchase order be canceled.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Great, Mike. Thanks for that review for goods confirmation and three-way match. Again, you know, we're checking for the chat for questions, but we will also be following up. Just wanted to give a reminder to not be discouraged if we don't get to your question during the presentation today, but we will follow up with all your questions. The next section that we'd like to talk about and provide is kind of a review for the support resources. So we want to just highlight some tips and tools for existing vendors and just give an opportunity to do a tour of the purchasing site. We're going to go back out and Megan's going to provide an overview for tips, tools, and resources. So Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Melissa. So just some reminders here. Most of the information we're talking about is located on purchasing.psu.edu. There have been some questions about how to update information. So the first thing I want to mention is to update contact information or those bank details that Mike was talking about. You have to log in the supplier portal to make those changes. Now, there are some guides on the website that are available to help you walk through. One of them is the supplier self-service guide. So this gives assistance with anything from login, maintaining company information, responding to qualification requests. And a note about RFX events. There is a separate document you can download for that. It's the self-service bidder guide that's available on psu.edu. We just want to remind everyone that the website is the best place to go for up-to-date information, and that as we work through this process with SIMBA being new, some of the guides you download, you'll want to check back for updates. So Melissa, if we can jump over to the site now. Again, we're going to purchasing.psu.edu.
Just 1 second. I'll just get back there. Open a fresh. Let me just open a fresh page here. Okay, and I'll let you kind of let me know where you want me to navigate to next.
Thank you. So we're at purchasing.psu.edu, and we're going to look at the right-hand side of the screen under Info for Suppliers. And if you click on that, this page is kind of a summary of all the pages that are available, but we're going to click through and go to Become a Supplier. And from here, you can see we have information for new applicants, bidders, approved suppliers. The new applicant section has the supplier registration form. And then you'll see in the bullets, there's the documents you can download for instructions. And also the W-9 and W-8 forms are available here as well. And then we have a link to the purchasing terms and conditions. If you scroll down that page, Melissa, under bidder, you'll see a helpful guide to download there. And then there's also a guide under the approved suppliers that you can download for instructions as well. And that guide helps again with login, updating company information, things like that. The other resources that we want to point out today, Melissa, if you scroll to the top of the page.
Don't make anybody dizzy, so I'm going to go slow. There we go.
There we go. Now I'm at the top of the page now. So if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a couple things that we want to point out for resources. The first one is the supplier FAQs. And then, so here there's a lot of frequently asked questions. And you can search those FAQs as well. You'll see the search bar at the top. The other page that we wanted to point out is the supplier support form. Now, as Melissa said, we're going to follow up with the chat questions to make sure we have those answered today. But this is another form you can submit your questions here. and there's a drop down where you can select your topic. If you could today, it would be helpful for us in the message. If you select other, just to put in that you were attending this session on November 19th.
Yeah, and
And then one
Go ahead.
last item, Melissa, if you scroll to the top of that page again, please. And you'll go, yeah, there we are at the top. You'll see there's a search this site, and that's a helpful tool as well to just put in some words if you're looking for any type of answer.
great.
But again, purchasing.psu.edu is the place to go for the most up-to-date information.